After e4, e5, knight c3, knight f6, and f4. As mentioned in one of the many previous videos, pawn takes in f4 is wrong because you play e5. And now the only square to go to will be knight to g8. We already went through queen e7 pinning the pawn and everything that happens next. Make sure you watch all of the other videos of this saga so that you understand exactly how to master the Vienna Gambit. We're gonna go through this idea that needs to be seen. Knight g8 and now knight f3, obviously you want to prevent queen h4, and the early bishop e7. The idea of the black player is to consolidate the pawn advantage and play this annoying bishop h4 move, which will force us to play king e2. So here the key move is bishop to c4, and now after this check, in one of the previous videos we went through something similar. It's not the same, but it was similar, where you play king e2 to face king f1 to face this check, this bishop h4 check. In this case though, we're gonna go through g3. This is part of a line. And now after pawn takes, the opponent is threatening to take another pawn here if we take back. And the situation looking actually really bad. Here you castle. And now pawn takes back again, and now king h1. We are down 3 pawns. Remember, you don't take the pawn because you don't want to expose your king, because at the moment you'll be subject to attack. We have 4 developed pieces. The rook is on an open file, so it's developed, and the king is castled. So we did 5 steps of development, whereas our opponent only did 1 step of development, which is the development of the bishop. In exchange of that, he got material advantage, but that's not a problem for us. Remember, black knight now cannot develop to e7 because the knight in the bishop in h4 will be unguarded. Cannot develop to f6 because he can take it. So after knight to h6, we're going to go through this move because, well, every other move, you'll see what happens. d4 comes now. You're going to develop, the bishop is coming here. And now there's no good move for the knight. So we're going to look at d6 and castle. Let's say, for example, knight g4. The idea of knight f2. Here, you already have everything well developed, so bishop f7 is happening. And when the king takes the bishop, you're going to be able to take the bishop in h4 with the discover check of the rook. And if the knight remains in g4, you can take it as well. If the knight goes back to f6, you can also take it. You're completely winning. If the king goes to, let's say, f8, then simply bishop to h5. And now you're threatening a horribly strong discover check. Knight with 2 here, forking king and queen doesn't work. You take, bishop takes back. But now you play bishop to g5. And the queen is trapped. You see the importance of development. In this position we went through knight g4. What happens after knight to f5? Again, you're so developed that you can do these tactics. Bishop takes, king takes, and then knight takes bishop in h4. Surprisingly. The knight is pinned, we can all tell that. The queen is not, but after queen takes and now rook takes with check. King moves. Obviously not for dark square, because let's say king e7, but then you have bishop g5 check. So king e8. Either way, bishop g5 is coming, you're attacking the rook, there's nowhere to go. Well, there's places to go, but that will be g4, h5, they're all under attack, d4. So the place to go will be g3 or h3. Let's say, for example, queen to h3. Now rook f3. The queen will now, from h3, she has an escape to e6. Whereas from g3, that wouldn't have happened. Well, if the queen, let's say, had gone to g3, then you play queen h5 check. Surprisingly. Well, now you have full access over the last rank, so you're going to checkmate, and you might wonder what happens after g6. Seems to be making sense. It's also a fork. Knight to d5. Boom. It's an incredible move. And now you're threatening knight c7, that's unstoppable. Pawn taking queen or rook, doesn't matter. Let's say pawn takes the queen. You got this move, that's checkmate. And in this position, we mentioned what happened after queen takes back. We noticed that there's too much development on our side. What happens after the more normal looking move? g6. This doesn't help because rook takes. Pawn takes back. Queen h5 is a checkmate coming very soon. Latest it will happen in 7 moves. You can figure it out from here. So from the start, let's look at something else. So f4 and the early capture. Okay, e5, knight g8, knight f3, bishop e7, bishop c4, key move. Bishop check, g3. Take, castle. Take, king h1. God, do I love this game. So knight h6, only way to develop will be met with d4. Now let's look at 2 other normal moves. You might wonder, okay, what if black tries to play a decent move? Castle. That's not decent, right? You're gonna take. So just to point this out, take back, and now queen to d2 attacking h6. It looks like this can be met with bishop to g5, right? But still, queen to h... the hell? Queen to h2 now. And this king is not gonna last. d6, well, you play knight e4. You got 2 attackers over this bishop. King to h8, trying to get the rook to play. Knight takes in g5. Pawn takes, and now knight to f6. The threat is unstoppable in h7, so our opponent will have to give us the queen. And in this position, we mentioned what happened after bishop g5. What if instead the king goes to h8 straight away? Okay, well, we take the pawn in h6. This is very easy now. Bishop to e7, retreating and saving the bishop from the queen. Bishop to d3, going for a very cheeky, easy checkmate. f5, take en passant. Rook to f7, protecting the checkmate square, where knight e5 will end the game. Queen to f8, desperate for swap, doesn't matter. Knight takes, queen takes, and now you take this one in e7, completely winning position. So one more thing we're going to mention. In this position, the black player developed the knight, and we just played d4. What if black plays d6 now? Normal move. Without castling. Well, still, the thematic move happens. You're going to take this knight, pawn takes back. Queen e2 comes now, and there's too many threats. Discover check and so on. Pawn, pushing the pawn doesn't do anything. Taking in e5 allows us to make a fork. There's no coming back. Bishop to g4, maybe pinning the knight. Doesn't matter. Take, check. King moves to f8. And now queen takes h2 as usual. Thematic move. And we're attacking this bishop as well. So if queen takes d6, you do have an attack on that bishop. And if bishop moves away, well, then you have pawn takes in c7. That's a fork. So let's look at this line now. One of those that we haven't seen. This is still with the knight f6 beginning, and now f4. d5, so the main move, the main line. Take, and after pawn takes in f4, bishop to c4. We've seen a lot of stuff about this, but we need to see this move. c6, well, we have seen this one. Now we played d4, but we haven't seen knight takes d5. After knight takes d5 here, surprisingly, you take the knight with the bishop. You're giving the bishop pair for the knight. Pawn takes back, but now black has an isolated pawn. And well, these two also double pawn, but it's 4 against 2. So it looks like this is not that bad for the black player. Okay, queen h5 comes now, and it's putting pressure over d5. Bishop e6 defends and develops. Knight g2 e2 attacks the pawn. Bishop to b4 develops and pins the knight. We take this pawn, and after castle, castle. We don't care if we get taken. See, for example, take. This is actually good structure for us. So let's say knight c6 now. Or, well, knight to d7. It will be more accurate, the idea of going to f6. Because knight c6 doesn't have any future prospect. Okay, here you just play development. Rook f3, knight to f6, attacking the queen. Take. This is the best move. And now here, knight takes queen. Well, you just take the opponent queen. Then the opponent will take you back. Let's say rook takes. Either way, you play g4. The only move now is knight to f6. And this is black having played computer moves only. And it should give you a better endgame, obviously, because you're going to play bishop to g5. And now you're pinning the knight. You got double attack on f6. So after rook to d6, protecting that knight. Well, in that case, we have to take, because the knight is no longer pinned. Rook takes back. Rook takes, pawn takes. And you carry on in this endgame. It's not easy. Rook to b1, b6. This is basically best computer moves by both sides, and it ends up like this. So it don't have to worry, it's not going to happen. You're going to play king f2, you're going to play this endgame, and you do have a target, which is this isolated pawn and these two isolated pawns, but you're going to have to take it from here. And in this position, we went through what happens after knight takes. What if pawn simply takes back? Well, queen e5 now puts pressure on the backward pawn. Black's best move would be queen to b6. And white's best move is bishop to h6. Obviously, if pawn takes, then you've got a much better situation on the opponent king side. If obviously pushing is not possible, because you'd win the exchange, you'd win a piece actually. Rook f7. h3 is the best move, stopping the annoying knight g4. Okay, well, queen to b2 attacking the rook. Rook a to f1. And we're completely winning here. The knight is pinned and we're gonna smash everything and should be checkmate soon. If instead of queen b2 the queen had actually gone to d8 to put more defense over this knight, rook to f1 comes anyway. And the knight is still pinned. The idea here is to take in g7. This is the best move. And then we're smashing the opponent king side. If, let's say, if it was our move again, we will play this move. If king takes, queen g5 check. And now the king will have to be unable to defend the knight anymore, and you can just go on with the rook, and you're completely winning this endgame.